Hello, my name is Benjamin Yudiin. I am the new Director of Education and Principal here at Congregation Beth Shalom. Today, we are going to offer a small presentation on Kaballah and Pesach. And we will go through the Passover plate and explain how the Kabbalists views each of the ingredients of the Passover plate. However, before we can understand that, we must first understand a few things. And this would be part of the story of Passover according to the Kaballah. The Kabbalah says that almost everything in the Torah has an inner meaning. And so today, I'm going to offer the inner meaning to the story of Passover. First, we have Egypt. The land of Egypt is the land within us that is filled with ego, imagination, desires, hatreds, negative emotions, such as anger or fear. And the voice of Egypt is the Pharaoh within us. It is the part that tells us how to live in any given moment just to serve ourselves or our own needs or our own wants and desires. However, within us, we also have a Moses. Moses is that part within us that is trying to take us out of this, what we call the lower self, the Egypt within us, and take us into the divine within us. The Kabbalah says that within us, we have a small spark of the divine. And so that in the Torah is called Israel. Israel is here. It is where God dwells within us. And so the aim is for the Moses within us to be educated enough to be able to take us from the part within us that wishes an easy life with no suffering and all joy and everything we want we should have, to the land of Israel. But in order to attain the land of Israel, we have to go through the desert. And the desert is this life we are living. We have to learn how to walk through this desert with the assistance of God, with the God that is within us. And so it is Moses, the Moses within us, which is not divine, but can lead us to the divine. The Moses within us rules Pharaoh and takes us from a slave consciousness of Egypt, the life of imagination, the life of desires, to a God consciousness, the life of love, the life of compassion, forgiveness, patience, understanding. And we do that by embracing our suffering, not wishing it to go away, embracing it and transforming it into more of the divine within us. And we are all suffering right now with the coronavirus. And there are some of us that are wasting our time trying to blame who's responsible. And many of us go into anxiety or stress, wondering how long it will last. For the Kabbalists, they have a term, Gamzu Latova. Whatever it is that God gives us, we will use it for the good. And so it is our suffering that we all have and our friction that we have every day, from traffic to a broken nail, that we can use first by embracing it and then by transforming and accepting it. So instead of going into self-deprecation or self-pity, When we suffer, the Kabbalist says, no, transform it into creating a greater soul. And so, in order to start the trip to Israel, to where God dwells, we have to cross the Red Sea. The Red Sea is the path. It means that a person is leaving Egypt behind and beginning to walk the path towards Israel, towards the God within us. So the symbolism of crossing the Red Sea is saying, I am now going to dedicate my life towards changing and living as if I am no longer a slave to the lower consciousness of the Egypt within me, but I am heading towards the divine consciousness. And what do we need in order to make this path viable? We need wisdom. And so we are given, right after we cross the sea, the Torah. And the Torah, it has an inner meaning to almost everything that's within it. And that inner meaning is the wisdom that we need in order to traverse the desert, accepting whatever befalls us, and entering the land of Israel, the land of God. And if you can remember from the story in the Torah, Moses was not allowed to enter the land of Israel. So that part within us that is the consciousness of trying to have us live a more noble and pure existence, that is still part of the body. It is the higher part of the body, but it is not divine. And so it is not able to enter the land of Israel. We are now going to do the inner meaning to the Passover Seder plate with the background that we just have. The purpose for holidays is to take us out of patterns. And when we are out of patterns, we are a little bit quieter. We are a little bit more aware of our surroundings or ourselves. And so the purpose of Pesach is to make us aware of what we are and what we can become. And so we have the holiday of the Jews, that part within us that is spiritual, exiting the part within us that is just material and physical, and entering into the land and the wisdom of divine, the land flowing with milk and honey. And the first thing we are going to do is talk about wine. Wine is the highest level of spiritual understanding. And we have wine in almost every single holiday within Judaism, especially on Shabbat. We make the Kiddush. And we are to take this wine and taste it and use it to make us happy. And this is the purpose of spiritual wisdom, to take us out of the part that is dense and heavy and living in fear into the part within us that is divine, serene, joyful, and loving. The most important or the most popular piece of tradition on Passover is the matzah. And the matzah is something that is not allowed to grow, to become bigger. At some point, we have to take it out, and it's very different than bread. And so the matzah represents that part within us that is humble, and that is the soul. And so we partake of the matzah being aware that we are doing this to be present to this gift that God gave us, this divine spark that can grow and become literally and form a union with the divine. The next part is the karpas. The karpas on the Passover plate is the green vegetable. And the green vegetable is very delicious. It's very easy to eat, and it's very comforting when we eat it. And it's called karpas. And the Kabbalah says, this is how we got to the land of Egypt. We got to the land of Egypt by living an easy life, a life without wisdom, a life living in imagination about the past or the future, a life without the divine guiding it. And for the Kabbalists, they know that everything that is given to them is coming from providence, from above. The next is the salt water. Salt water, everybody says, represents the Red Sea, or the Sea of Reeds that we walked through when that God split. However, the salt water represents suffering. And if we use our suffering correctly, we will be transformed from that part within us that is filled with ourselves to that matzah part, to that part that is humble, that part that is compassionate, the part that is loving and accepting. And we will serve our fellow man. And we will do justice to others. However, we first must go through suffering. We must learn how to use that suffering in order to create a soul. And there is an example in one of the fairy tales of Aladdin's lamp. If the lamp is not rubbed, the genie will come out. And this is the lamp. And the rub is the salt water, the suffering in our lives. If we use correctly, it will make us aware of the presence of the God within each of us. The next part is the shank bone. The shank bone is something that we don't eat, but it symbolizes a sacrifice. It symbolizes the sacrifice of the lamb that was used or done at every Passover. And so, at some point in our lives, we have to sacrifice that which within us makes us lazy or in self-indulgence, and become sacrificing that and become part of the divine, again, that the Kabbalah says exists within, but we have to be shown how to attain it and how to live our lives once we do become aware of it. The next part is the charoset. The charoset is the mortar that was used. That's what it in theory represents. The mortar that was used to build all these edifices that the Egyptians had the Israelites build. And so this charoset represents effort. It is the effort that we must make moment to moment to have the divine within us overrule the Pharaoh within us, or the lower self, or the Egyptian within us. And by doing this, by creating the soul through these efforts, we will enjoy the fruits of our labor. In the Torah, when they talk about the Exodus, in the beginning, they talk about how the Egyptians made it even more difficult upon the Jews before Moses came. And the Torah says very clearly that even with even more difficulties that the Egyptians gave us, the Jews grew stronger. And what does that mean, they grew stronger? Through our suffering, if we transform it and use it well, we will all become stronger. And what does it mean to be stronger? Like it says in Pirkei Avot, Ethics of Our Fathers, who is strong? He who is able to control his passions, his anger, his desires. And so charoset is the effort that is required to pursue the higher and the difficult, as opposed to indulging in that which is easier. And the last thing that we will talk about is the Beitzah, the egg. And the egg represents many different things, but it is birth or renewal. And what is it that we are giving birth to? Or what is it that we are renewing? We are giving birth to the God within us. We are giving birth to a new life, to the neshama, to the soul. In the Torah, there's the word nefesh and neshama. And unfortunately, both are translated as the soul. But nefesh is that part within us that is the physical. And neshama is that part within us that is the spiritual. And so the Beitzah celebrates the renewal of our existence in every given moment with the presence and the awareness of God. This is the plate that you will all use at your Seder, and all of the symbols that we just talked about are here. And now you will be able to use this plate to help create yourself, walking from or traveling from the Egypt within us to the Israel within us. Chag Sameach.